what do you think of Eric?
We did about what other people in our area, like young people in our area, have to face in everyday life today. There's people who don't have enough to eat. There's kids going to school without the breakfast, and then they're having the food paid for by benefits at school, so not having enough food to eat. We've got broken families, maybe the parents are split up, and maybe they aren't actually having the proper love and like encouragement they really need. There's a lot of pressure at the moment about relationships and what relationships can give you, if you know what I mean. Like 13-year-old girls have that kind of, I know 13 and 14-year-old girls who are in those situations. The schoolwork, there's too much pressure on the money. There's a money focus on everything in life now. And I think we didn't get on to really how to solve it, but we do.
That's the next time you said.
That will take time, but we do know exactly what is actually going on in our area right now.
Yeah, it's just that those are the things actually that each of these people here are actually supporting friends who are like going through those situations. So they were like very real things. It wasn't just a list of like made up kind of difficult situations. Each one of them have got friends who are actually living it. And so we were just talking about, like Erin said, we didn't quite get around to this, but we want to think about like how can we really go and love those people and serve them, and what does that look like for young people, and yeah.
It's amazing. Do you want to say anything?
It's terrific, especially because you've rooted it in people you actually know. So one of the things is, you'll know this, schools are under intense pressure to provide a range of services that they've never had to do until very recent times. So one of the questions for the church, I think, is how do we help the schools deliver some of the things that they've not been asked to do before. They've become the surrogate parents. So the engagement with schools would be one of the ways, but also out of school stuff and the provision and stuff. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay, this group right behind you.
We felt that there was some room for improvement on how we review in terms of short term and in terms of long term the vision, but we also felt that in terms of who is the poorest, maybe just outside our parish boundary there's a Rowley population that tends to possibly be overlooked, and in terms of who are the neediest, we felt that there was once you had children, there was sort of toddlers and messy church, and there was things for retired people, there was other things, workers group, 3G group. But if you were single people and lonely and not necessarily with a lot of warmth to go and chat to and talk to people and go outside, go out and find things, we found that in terms of not just retired people, in terms of not just in terms of singles, retired and widows, but also in terms of the singles, the people that are moving into the Protestant estate, because that's affordable to first-time buyers. They go to work, they come home, and they don't know what else there is to do in the area. We felt that that was possibly a place of spiritual need where we could somehow step into that. Not quite sure how yet, but we're working on it.
Brilliant. Well, there's a story from the time of Southampton. This is a new estate that was being built, Hedge End, which is on the edge of Southampton. The local church managed to do a deal with the builders where they produced the pack of material which went into every new home as it was occupied, saying, here's the GPs, these are the dentists, this is where the shops are, this is the local bus timetable, and here we are as local church to serve you. And it was the church that hand-delivered to everybody as they moved in. So they had now that's, when it's a brand new estate, and if you can get that kind of, that's fantastic. But I think you're right, in terms of your every household, are there ways of informing people in that process of giving information and actually saying to them, if you're scared about going to X, we'll come and collect you. And I'm not talking about church activities there, they might want to go to the bingo hall. That might be a shock to your system, and it would be to mine. But that might be a way of saying.
Thank you. That welcome booklet idea you mentioned, Long Newton do that.
Right.
The church in Long Newton, they had those booklets for people moving into the village, which is a smaller community where people know when people are moving in. The challenge we have, it's a great idea.
Absolutely.
The challenge we have is how do we find where people are moving in? Yeah, monitors for that would be really good.
It is a little bit about watching for the boards.
Exactly. Yeah.
And watching for the vans to arrive.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. It's good. Andrew?
We discovered, to our horror, that none of us actually live in the parish. We come from Heartburn and other places. So Jan in particular found it lovely just to have time to walk around the streets and think about the people nearby. We do need to understand the community better, the issues of poverty, for example. We know that it's not always local toddlers who are coming to the toddlers group. So, should we be knocking on the parish doors? Well, actually, there are some local people coming for baptism and so on. But we don't know enough about the Trees estate. We are very middle class here, and that's why Messy Church is so good. And one of the ways Messy Church gets advertised is by going into schools. So that's another way of reaching into the actual community that we have here. And the Connect lunches and the seated exercise are drawing in local people. That's great. Should we be concerned that maybe we're not managing to get people to come to the 9 and 10:30 and 6:30 services more? Should we be worried about those services not actually growing? No. We need to let people meet God in whatever context they find best, and it may be that for quite some time to come, those alternative ways of meeting with the Christian community will be the best for them.
Thank you.
The most important thing about things like Messy Church is that for the people who come, that is church. And we must never give any impression that you're only coming to church properly if you come to the 9:30 or the 10:30. And that is the stark reality of when you're dealing with people coming into faith. That's their experience of church. So that's I'm sure one reason why this afternoon some of us are going to be thinking about making messy disciples. Because what might that growing church look like? Stephen Cottrell, the Bishop of Chelmsford, tells a fantastic story against himself of when he was a parish priest praying for church growth and bemoaning to God after a couple of years that he had not seen any growth whatsoever in his Sunday morning services. And as he was praying, sensing the Spirit say to him, have you not noticed Wednesday mornings? Because their Wednesday morning communion had grown from almost nothing to 25, 30 people, most of whom were nothing to do with church when he first arrived. And he had grown church, but it was when he was in a setting where lots of people couldn't go on a Sunday because they were working, but they could go on a Wednesday morning. So how do we convey the right impressions about what is church?
Yes, rather like that experience. Our Sunday morning congregations are stable in terms of numbers, but where all our midweek stuff and Sunday afternoon is growing.
Yeah. And that's where growth is happening in lots of places around the country.
But unlike the Bishop of Chelmsford, we're not moaning about it. There we go. This group here.
We were kind of similar to your group as well, in that none of us are from the parish of the church. But so we had satellite bits going on. But some of the thoughts were similar. We also talked a bit about trying to just recognising that sometimes we try and second guess what people's needs might be. And sometimes that works fantastically, but actually felt that a lot of that was about relationship with people, and that we need to have relationships with people in order to actually know what it was that they wanted and needed. And thinking about ways of meeting with people, and some of that does happen. That's why Messy Church is working really fab, isn't it? And the Easter, and thinking about how we as individuals could do some of that. And we also talked a little bit about potentially hooking into a bit more sort of social action groups as well, and something that's a lot on my heart is about dementia friends, and thinking actually do we embrace that as a church and hook into that, and also invite other people from the community, because there are people around us who have nothing to do with church but who do some amazing things and have beautiful hearts, and actually giving people opportunity to come together about something And then that also helps you build those relationships, and then when you build those relationships, then you get to know what the needs are, and you develop, so that it's a slower burn, but in a sense that's a lot of where we felt there was room for growth as well. And similarly, we talked about the issue of the people in the middle, so the people who didn't go to retirement stuff and the people who weren't at the toddlers things, but who still needed opportunity, but that it's quite... people are really suspicious, understandably, if you say, well, what can we do for you? People think, what do you want from me? So again, that just came back to building those links and knowing the people that are around us, really. Is there anything else we wanted to...
I think we also said about the fact that we've got lots of people that come physically into the building, and actually I don't think probably at the moment we're necessarily making the most of actually the relationships that we've already got with people, and actually being able to develop those, obviously through Messy Church, actually getting into, actually spending some more time with them, inviting them along to other things, and so on, and also perhaps with the Connect group, the sort of that's a growing group, but actually looking at how we can serve those people that we already have a relationship with as well. We felt we could perhaps develop that further.
Yeah, Paul's benefit. Connect is our ministry to retired people.
Okay.
Right.
A couple of things about living out in the parish and travelling in. Two thoughts. That's not uncommon, of course. Don't feel guilty about it. It's not uncommon. But my raising the question with you about being one of the larger, better resourced things about serving the wife is how might that play out in the communities in which you do live? And that requires careful conversations with neighbouring churches and neighbouring parishes. But I think that's one of the questions. So it's not just how do you bless the parish in which you worship, but how does the parish in which you worship bless the communities in which you live by how you serve it? Because people are very mobile. Even quite a lot of the poorer people are very mobile. That some are not. And I really have to remember, we do still meet people on estates who really don't get off that estate. Sometimes out of choice, but sometimes it just costs too much just to get on the bus and get off. I heard this story from a leading Labour politician who will remain nameless, but they were doing some work on listening to the needs of the community. Not in this part of the country, but it was a bit of a national initiative. So they were rolling it out in one part of the country, and Labour Party activists were being asked to go to people's homes and listen to their needs to help them understand what they might shape as future policy. But they tracked. They sent a monitor in to see what was happening. On average, after 25 seconds, the researcher interrupted the person who they were supposed to be listening to, and nearly always said, "You say that, but don't you think?" And so they pulled the whole project and retrained the entire research team into how to listen properly. Because they'd gone in with a conviction about these are the real needs of these people. And we're just going to trump anything the real people actually said. And I'm afraid we're guilty of that as Christians often. I'm guilty too. And really listening to what people say they need, and deeply listening, is a long, slow, patient process. So it's worth thinking that through.
Thank you. Move on to this group then, shall we? Who's with us first? Person in this group who wasn't with their shoes.
I think we went through a discussion what the people in the community who were the people who need to be engaged with. It's quite an affluent area. I'm not from this area, but Arkansas is quite affluent. You don't have the social problems you do in Middlesbrough or Stockton. So within the parish,
we sort of came to agreement that the elderly were sort of the people that need to be engaged. The only problem I have an issue with is going knocking on people's doors. You've got a happy clapper knocking on your door and saying, do you know, from the local church, do you want to engage with us? And just like you say, no, well, you know, because I think we've all done half of it. And so how do you reach out to the people that need you? We've got elderly people in the community. I don't know how many people that don't know the neighbours or don't engage with the neighbours. And how do you engage with them? And we had an issue about volunteers as well. Because when I see a lot of volunteers doing the same work and the same people volunteering. And everybody's sort of got a responsibility. Everybody comes to the church and got a responsibility to sort of engage with everybody around them. So how many people in the street know the neighbours, can sort of knock on the door, see if they're alright. But it also I think it comes down to something more practical as well. You know, elderly people, the company comes from it, but do they need hand with the garden? Do they need hand with shopping? I don't know, can the church offer some type of service where they go and take them out? I know they do it every month, take them to the meeting, the monthly visits out. It's day-to-day practical stuff. And by that practical stuff, you engage with them, and then slowly you build a relationship, then you bring them, you know, it's not, I think, what was the term we used, Brian, not recruitment. It's like offering a service to the community instead of trying to recruit them into the church.
It's a go structure, not a come structure.
Yeah, because you can't be seen to be going out, I don't think. I know that's part of it, going out and sort of trying to recruit the church. It's about, I think, what the bishop's saying is going out there and just sort of serve the community, and hopefully they'll come to you through that. So we didn't really come to a conclusion how you do that, but I think everybody's got a responsibility just to try and sort of see the people around you who need something. And can we, as a church, practically offer that, I don't know, a minibus with disabled access on it? I know it all costs money. Employment of a driver, you know, because it can't be down to volunteers doing that all the time. I know these all have costs, but that's a way to get out there and have somebody, you could be employing somebody who's a regular job of running people to the shops and take them on and that sort of thing. I don't know. That's also a conclusion.
Thank you.
It is about serving for the sake of serving the people, not what we get out of it, not how they respond. We just love people because God loves people, and and it has to be that. You're right about running a job and so on. I mean, I had something through from one of our church schools this week, who have created 4 apprenticeships in their school in the last year around becoming apprentice classroom assistants stroke teachers. And it's been so successful, they're creating 2 more apprenticeships next year around the role of site supervisor caretaker. Because the governor said, how do we as a church school express concern about employment in our area, and are there practical things we might need to do? And I seriously wonder whether, and I'm trying to work through how I might do this in my office, how might we as church do a bit of employment apprenticeship creation? We can't create hundreds and thousands of jobs. That's business, and we have to support business in doing that kind of thing. But maybe we can just do some technical. The other thing is, we don't always, in serving the community, we don't always have to do massively difficult things that cost a huge amount of money. I tell the story that it is Rosemary. When I became Bishop of Southampton, we moved to Romsey in Hampshire now. Romsey is really posh and very well to do. And we lived on a private road that wasn't made up. I always think it's very funny that people who think they've made it when they move to a street that isn't made up properly. Hang on. Anyway, and the first year we were there, we were conscious that we hardly ever saw our neighbours because everybody got into the car in the morning and drove off, and I was doing the same. So we said, right, Christmas time, we are going to invite all our neighbours for a drink and nibbles, which cost us a few bottles of wine and beer and a few packets of crisps. It was slightly more than that, but we were completely taken aback because every single one of our neighbours came. And they talked to, and we worked out by the end of the evening, they were meeting each other for the first time. So we thought, so we did it again the next Christmas, and everybody came. And after 5 years, when we left, we had simply done that once a year. And they came to us and said, you have done more for this street and community than anybody has done in living memory. Now, all we'd done was throw a drinks party once a year. So we felt we were constantly wrestling with what more could we do, should we do. They were saying, you're the people who are creating glue to the community. So I think actually finding... So what I'm saying is that my eldest daughter, Caroline, they just threw a big lunch for their block on their estate in East London 2 weekends ago. And after they got through the fear factor of getting out because of the situation on the estate at the moment, everybody from that block came out and shared in their lunch. And they'll just do it once a year, likewise. But it's all, we can build community by doing relatively simple, relatively cheap things. And where church can come into that kind of thing and say, well, why don't we all do a small number around things like the Big Lunch Project or the Big Tea Project? And it doesn't matter where you live then, of course, that's one of those things, we'll do it where we live. Sorry, that was a longer answer.
We better move on because time is taking us here, but if there's anything that needs to be added...
I better not say anymore.
We spent some time thinking what's gone well in this church, sort of in the town, the vision, and the things that we thought about particularly were the children's and youth work, which has been a strength of this church for many years, but the Lord has blessed this in new ways. The toddlers, the play and praise during the week has grown. The messy church has started and the Lord has blessed that. And then we thought about the ministry to older people. The lunch club has been blessed, numbers have grown, and there's been some outreach to some people with special needs called treasure seekers. So we looked at the positives to start with, and then we got into the gritty issue of relating to the community. Again, only one of our members actually lived in the area. There were a few thoughts of things that had gone well. For example, when we delivered a community in touch, it was felt that was worthwhile, that sort of let people know what was going on. Street parties 2012 were thought to be positives as well. And when people hear of Christians sort of helping people out, that is seen to be a testimony in the area. We then took a bit of time thinking about who were the Batwa equivalents in our area. And we thought these were probably older people who are isolated. Some, as we've heard in the media just this week, never speak to anyone for weeks on end. And the challenge was, how can we better connect? So we chewed that over. Probably no great answers, but that particularly came to us. Then we talked about sort of prayer for the area. Thought that in the past, when we've done prayer walks around the area, they've been helpful. And through a new initiative with adopting a street where we're to pray for that street sort of several times a week as individuals. And so prayer is thought to be crucial. Anything else? Yes, the Ablaze prayer on the fourth Sunday evening is thought to really focus on prayer for the community, and that has seemed to be putting the vision into practice sort of in a prayerful way, and that's been positive as well.
Brilliant, thank you, David. Move the microphone on to this side. Right here, speak. Jill.
Like many other groups, we also commented on the fact that none of us live in the parish. Does anyone live in the parish? However, we did firmly believe, all of us, that the Lord has called us to worship here, and it only makes our mission feel wider when we leave this place, so that itself is a challenge. We also commented on many of the good things that happen in this place. It's a delightful church to belong to, and we feel very blessed being here. But we did think about churches that are involved with Food Bank and the way in which they are working in a very practical way to help people who obviously have needs. And it's very not part of our situated culture, and it should be. the whole business of poverty. We also talked about the role of dads in the community and how the social structure is changing. And perhaps that could be an area that we could maybe consider and think about. On the back of commenting on all the excellent things that happen here, what shall I say? We strongly believe, and I think this is more a personal comment, that we are a family. And as a family, we are a family together. But we do have two separate, distinct services. And it would be just lovely, I think, for us to be able to get together. And I know we do this through the summer with just one service, but a lot of people are away during that time. But it would be lovely to have some more integration between the two services. And it would be good to have a slot in each service where we could hear about the work of the young people. And I'm talking about just a 5-minute slot because there's so many very positive things happening there. But in some ways, some of us can feel slightly alienated from that. And that would be something that we would very much enjoy, having just a 5-minute slot. I think it's great that we're all wearing badges today. My memory's terrible anyway, but there's so many people who belong to this church for such a long time, whose names I don't know. And it would be embarrassing to say, can I ask you what your name is? Because they've been worshipping here for years. So every now and again, I really would like to see us wear badges more often, so that we can, sort of very much feel part of this extended family that we've been blessed with. Was there anything else?
Thank you, Mary. Joy, there's someone who lives in the parish here. Anyone else wants to say yes, as the representative of our parish?
Yes, I do live in the parish. We talked about the practical side of helping people and care force, and the fact that we sort of ran out of things to do for people, although it was in demand a lot, and how we could find out who were the most needy people and what we could do for them. We talked about a leaflet drop, and then we thought, the whole of the parish at once may be too much to do that sort of thing with, and maybe we could divide it up into smaller areas, and not just put things through the door, but knock on the door. Maybe give them a questionnaire that says, do you feel alone? Are there any things that you feel that you could do with help with? And make some suggestions, shopping or going to the doctors or whatever. And we again talked about the other outreach things that connect and so on. And we again decided that it was definitely not about getting people to come through the doors on a Sunday morning, but it was about just loving them where they are.
Great, thank you, Sue.
Yeah, it was just that I know people say about Messy Church and Connect and things and all. They just come, they'll come and it's once a month or it's whatever. However, with Messy Church, I'm not as involved with Messy Church at all. In fact, I'm not. But I would presume that other people would actually be encouraging other the families and things, and it is all about just showing the love of God, basically. And also with Connect, you get to know the people you're giving lifts to when you're sitting on their tables and everything. And I do know that there's quite a few people who actually in Connect actually go and give lifts to the people who come to Connect to go to the doctors and to do help, and just be there, because there's a lot of lonely people out there. And that's one of the things we were discussing, is how can we reach the people who are on their own. And we talked about, going down your own road as well. And actually, if they need help or need lifts to the doctors or just need someone to pray with them or talk to, or there's a lot of people in the parish and in the wider parish that, the single mums that are on their own, or they've got, disabled people who are in there and they need breaks and things, and I think that's one of the things we were discussing basically. How do we get to them to let them know that they're not alone basically? And that's where the leaflet drop came in. It was to do with basically we're there to support you. It doesn't matter whether you come to church on a Sunday or whatever. We're just there, and basically we're just wanting to shine God's light basically.
I'll add to that. Thank you, Alex. Sue, final group.
Hi, we spent some time, like most people in the room, recognising that this church does an awful lot of good stuff. But nevertheless, our kind of default church model was one whereby we invited people to come to our events, whether it be children's work, youth work, the retired, and have I left any more people out? But we did feel strongly that we didn't actually know where the needs were. So, and I think everybody else has kind of come up with the same kind of thought and feeling. We don't know who the hungry are, and yet we have in our church someone who works full time for a food bank. We don't know who the unmarried are. We don't know who the depressed are in our community, and yet these are people that are in definite need. And so we were kind of thinking about this, were there things that we should be applying ourselves to? And I think somebody came up with, well, why don't we kind of pool our resources and at least once in a month get out there into our community and knock on doors and make contact with people. Now, I've done that in the past and I've seen it bear fruit. The other thing, we brainstormed for a while. I'm kind of a gardener, love growing things. I've had a good year this year with my seeds. And I know that there are other people in the church that do likewise, and you grow your own veg and everything else, and you don't know what to do with it, so it ends up on the compost. But what if we again pooled our resources with our greenery and gave it away to the community? You know, are there people out there that would value some, things that we've actually grown naturally? Are there people out there that would appreciate a food parcel? We don't know. I just feel as though, if we're going to be true to our vision, we need to kind of get out there and organise ourselves a little bit better so that we can actually interact with our community properly. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mark. We're going to stop there because we're 15 minutes over time. There's lots there for PCC and MDT and other groups more informally to take forward, isn't there? There's a lot of stuff going on there. It's all recorded, so we can put that into notes and maybe cover that in Touch, the magazine as well. That'd be really good. What's happening